Hello, friends. Welcome to the LeggLife Podcast. My name is Adam.
My name is Sherry.
Sherry Beth, what episode is this?
25.
We are a quarter of the way to our 100th episode.
Yeah.
Sherry, start planning now
Oh, gosh.
for the 100th episode party, okay?
Well.
I do want to say that so we record our podcasts in our studio where we film our YouTube videos.
Yep.
And I'm looking out the door into the hallway and Missy looks dead.
I know.
Like, I look out the door and I just see a cat plopped over on her side, absolutely dead to the world.
Okay, well.
So Missy's going to nap while we record.
Okay.
Deal?
Deal.
So on this podcast, we're talking about podcasts.
Podcasts.
A little bit different of a topic. Sherry and I, and we'll get into this a little bit later, have loved this whole process.
Yep.
And doing podcasts has made us appreciate podcasts even more. And one of the things that you guys have asked us is, Adam and Sherry, what podcast do you guys listen to? Like, tell us more about your podcast loves.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny it's because you texted me earlier in the week and said, like, I think we should do a podcast on our favorite podcasts. And I was like, oh, geez, I'd have to go back and look at which ones we've done. And he's like,
what are you
and I
talking
said,
about?
oh, no, not ours. Okay, sorry. Like podcasts of other people that we listen to.
Sure thought I was like, hey, what episode's your favorite from the LeggLife podcast? Nope, not what I meant.
Sorry.
So some things we're going to talk about in this episode is what we love about podcasts. Like, what is it about this medium that we've really enjoyed? Then we're going to tell you some of our favorite podcasts. We have had to narrow it down because, especially for me, I could have gone a long time on this.
This could have been a very long podcast about podcasts.
A very long podcast about podcasts. And then we're going to talk about, like, where we listen to podcasts, like what we're doing when we listen to podcasts.
Yep.
Because that's kind of a unique thing about this medium is that some people only listen when they're doing one thing or only listen when they're doing another thing. We're going to tell you what we do. And then we're going to kind of end this with just a discussion about how we have liked podcasting. Again, we've done YouTube for almost 6 years.
Yeah.
We've done this for like 6 months.
Yeah.
And so we want to let you know how we're feeling about this, the future of this, and all of that. Sound good, Sherry?
Sounds good.
All right, so let's start just kind of even talking about what is it that we like or enjoy about podcasts. So what about you?
I really like that you can deep dive into a topic. I think that with like YouTube videos, aside from doing like really long series, it's hard to do like one topic well.
Yeah.
Or just have really, really long videos. And I feel like with this, we can kind of deep dive into a topic and talk about it for like an hour. And then like it's wrapped up. So I really like that.
Yeah, I do too. That's one of my favorite things about podcasts is the ability to go super deep into a specific topic.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. The other thing for me is, and it's kind of twofold, it's sort of entertainment and education. So I love that in podcasts, I could go either way. There are podcasts, like if I want to, like we were just talking about, like really learn something about a topic, if I want to become like smarter and more knowledgeable and just like grow my brain, if you will, like podcasts can help you do that. They can be very educational. But then there's a lot of podcasts that it's like, this is just straight entertainment for me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the whole goal of this is entertaining.
Sometimes they're both.
They really are. Yep, they really are. And I love that. So those are things that we love. One things that you really like though, Sherry, is that you can be doing other things.
Yes. So one of my problems with like YouTube is that I feel like the only time I really have to watch YouTube videos is in the evenings after work, when I would probably rather be reading a book or something like that. And so that's honestly why I don't watch a lot of YouTube, because like I would probably have time to watch videos at work, but it's hard to like watch a video and then be working as well. And so I feel like I'm just listening to the video. So I think that's where podcasts come in really well, because I can listen to a podcast and keep working.
I don't
have anything I have to like focus on, like my eyes have to focus on.
Your podcasts are able to go with you and do like whatever you're going and doing.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I remember one of the first times we got a comment from somebody who said that they have been a LeggLife subscriber for a long time, but they almost never watched any of our videos. They normally listen to them as podcasts. Like, that was such a foreign concept to me.
Right.
Because, like, for me, YouTube is just so video and visual driven. But then I realized there's, like, this whole community of people out there who like never watch one of our YouTube videos. They like listen to them as podcasts as they're going through their day.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, what? And so that's one of the ways, or one of the times that we started saying, okay, well, what about a podcast?
Yeah.
What if we created content for people who just wanted this kind of thing?
They just want to hear our beautiful voices.
Oh, so beautiful.
They don't need to see our beautiful faces.
Wow. Wow. You guys are really missing out because if you have seen Sherry's face,
Oh, gosh.
stunning.
Well, okay.
I'm flirting now.
Oh, okay.
Welcome to episode 25, the flirt episode.
All right. Well.
So back to podcast.
Focus.
Sorry. Squirrel. You and I have different histories with podcasts.
Yes.
I don't want to say, because we got into podcasting about the same time.
Yeah.
And we're going to now get into like what our favorite podcasts are. And we're going to start at the place that really you and I both started.
Yeah.
We both got hooked on the same thing. However, because of, again, my addictive personality, when I was hooked, I like dove in.
You were hooked and you found every possible podcast.
I think I've listened. I found the end of podcasts. I've listened to them all.
Yeah.
But you loved this first podcast, but then like you kind of have gotten, I don't know, you haven't gotten as deep into it as I have.
Not really. Yeah. I wish that I did.
Okay.
I don't know. I feel like for whatever reason, there's just kind of a block for me. And some of it is just, I think when I would want to listen to it is at work, and sometimes I actually just really need to focus on my work, and so then I just sort of forget that I wanted to listen to a podcast. So I don't feel like I get into it quite as much as I want to. I wish that I listened to a lot more.
So as we were compiling this list of favorite podcasts, it was a little harder for you, whereas for me it was
pretty easy, and honestly, like, I stole some of yours because I was like, oh, I listened to that with you.
Exactly. But the podcast we're going to start with, it's on Sherry's list, but really this is the one that first totally hooked us. I don't think it was my first podcast I ever listened to. Mm-hmm. It was the first podcast that absolutely captivated me in every way.
Yes.
What was that, Sherry?
Serial.
Season 1.
Season 1.
Oh my gosh.
This was like revolutionary for us.
So Sherry and I, like, we love sitting in the living room watching movies. I normally fall asleep. Don't troll me. But this was so amazing because we would sit in the living room, like around a phone where it was just audio. And I remember thinking that for me, it felt like this must have been what families felt like when they used to gather around their radio.
Yeah.
And listen
to I think we actually talked about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I loved that. But Serial Season 1, again, we're not going to give you like descriptions of all these podcasts. True crime podcast that to me is where my love of true crime podcasts were birthed, because this was a story that neither of us had heard of before,
right,
and absolutely consumed our life.
For sure. Yeah,
we would wait, like when the new episode was released, we'd listen to it that night, like as it was released, and it was fascinating. It was fascinating.
Yep.
And what was really cool is that it wasn't just for that period we were listening to the podcast. Then we would like go to bed and talk about this.
Right.
And it filled our conversations through the week. Mm-hmm. And so Serial Season 1 really is where at least my love, and I think your love as well, of podcast was born.
Yes. Because I think at the time it was just such a new medium, and it was just
certainly for us,
right?
Yeah, right.
It was really, because it wasn't really our first one that we had listened to. Like, it just wasn't a big part of our lives to just listen to audio. Like, neither one of us really listened to audiobooks.
No.
And so it was just sort of a new thing for us to do. I
haven't gone back and listened to Serial Season 1.
I think we should.
I think we should too.
Yeah.
So that's where we both started. So that's a favorite for both of us. That season.
Yes.
But then for you.
So, well, so there's 5 on my list.
Okay.
4 of which are shared with you.
Okay.
Because we listen to those 4 exclusively together.
Yep.
But this one is one that you told me about.
Yep.
And I was immediately hooked.
You were.
It is called Harry Potter and the Sacred Text. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to give a brief description of what this does. It goes through all of the Harry Potter books, chapter by chapter, starts in book 1, chapter 1. They kind of give a brief synopsis of what happens in that chapter, and then they apply like sacred traditions to it.
Yeah, they approach it as if it was a religious text, a sacred text.
Right, which is a little bit sacrilegious, but it's also like fascinating. And I love Harry Potter, and I've read them a million times. And so, like, it was just really so much fun. It's 2 people, and so they each just kind of give a brief synopsis, and then they, like, talk about how this chapter fits into whatever sacred tradition they're talking about that week. And they change it up, so it's not always the same kind of thing, and it's so good, and it's so fascinating, and it's so long because they do 1 chapter a week.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of chapters in 7 books.
Totally.
Yep.
You love that podcast.
I love that podcast.
For me, my next one is, I think, the only one on my list that isn't true crime. And that is Popcast. Now, my friend Carrie is the one who recommended this to me. And I remember listening to one episode and texting Carrie and being like, these are our people. So it's hosted by these 2 people, and it is a mix of pop culture, again, Popcast. And I love it because these are people who are Christians, and so they have like a sacrilegious kind of religious element to it that's really fun. They don't mind using language, but then they'll go in one story from talking about like a Bible verse or something like religious, and then they'll just deep dive into like the new Taylor Swift album.
Right.
And like the new Bachelor season. And all of this
the ones that I've listened to.
Yeah, well, that's true. You've listened to
the
Taylor Swift ones.
Yep.
I really love this show. Every time I listen to it, I laugh out loud. I just like them. I love their content. So to me, Popcast it's an enjoyable listen. You know, it's not true crime. It's just fun. It makes my day better when I get to listen to it.
Yeah, and the few that I have listened to, I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, really good.
Yep.
So Sherry Beth,
yes.
The rest of yours really are shared.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about them because Adam has more on his list, but these are all the rest ones that we have exclusively listened to, like, together.
Yep.
This next one is called S-Town.
Loved this one.
This it's another true crime. Just fascinating. Like, yep. I don't super love true crime.
Yeah.
In the whole scope of it, but I think true crime podcasts are just fascinating because you can deep dive, and it just kind of becomes this like weekly report almost on what's going on.
Yeah, I remember when we listened to this together, there were so many times that we would like pause it and be like, how is this real?
Hold on,
wait.
What did you just say?
And I love that. That's one of the things I like about listening to podcasts, this kind of podcast together, is that we have these almost like WTF moments.
Yeah.
And it's just like, hold on, what?
Yeah.
So yeah, S-Town was a super fun one. Yep. I love it. And I think you said something that's really important, because I think a lot of times when people hear true crime, they might think scary or gory or really graphic. But those are things that you can't do. Like, you can't watch a lot of true crime visual stuff.
Right.
Because of that. But I
can listen to facts about these true crime cases.
Exactly. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
To me, my next one, this was one I think, last year or the year before, I discovered. It's called Tom Brown's Body. It's of this 16-year-old who goes missing, small town Texas. Nobody knows who did it, like tight-knit community. And then body's discovered. And it's about the whole process of what happens in that. I binged this podcast.
Yeah.
So my approach to podcasts, I'll touch on this a little bit, because there's a lot of podcasts that I have an episode or two, and then I'm like, you know what? I actually don't think I'm feeling the story. And then I stop. Like I bet more than half the podcasts I start, I get an episode or two in, and then I bail. But then the ones that I love, I normally just like completely binge. Yeah. Like, they consume my life.
Yeah.
Tom Brown's Body was one of those. In fact, a lot of you guys, if you found us from YouTube, a lot of you may know Blair Lamb, fellow YouTuber, vlogger, Disney fanatic. I let Blair know about this podcast. Gosh, I think during 2020, during all of the COVID stuff, I let her know about this podcast. She's also a true crime fan, and she binged it as well and loved it. So I'm spreading the Tom Brown's Body gospel.
Good job.
Thank you, Sherry.
Yeah.
The next one on your list.
Up and Vanished.
One of my all-time favorite podcasts.
Yes. So this one was done by Payne Lindsay,
oh my
I think.
Gosh.
And he has like a great podcast voice.
Yep.
But he also just really like, it was a deep dive into this person who just like vanished. Like,
yep.
They had no remains. They had nothing. Like, she just disappeared.
It was Payne is such a good storyteller.
Yes, fantastic storyteller.
I remember that was one of the things you and I talked about was just how we felt like we were in this. Like we were listening to it, but it felt like he was painting such a picture that we were able to visualize this.
Yes, like he was able to walk you through the story, so like you were captivated by the story itself, but then he would also just like weave in these like WTF moments, and you're just like, what?
Oh man.
Yeah.
Up and Vanished is, I would say that if you're thinking about getting into true crime podcasts, you're wondering even what the true crime genre is like. Mm-hmm. I feel like Up and Vanished and Serial Season 1 are the two that I would say to listen to.
I would agree with that.
Because they're phenomenal.
Yes.
So for me, my next one is one that I just... It's fake. It has to be fake. I can't believe this is real. It's called The Dating Game Killer. It's about a serial killer in 1978. And about the people he poses as and the different things that he does. And it's just like... To me, it was so ridiculous. It was like you gathered people together and like, okay, let's come up with the craziest true crime story we could come up with about a serial killer. And then, like, let's make that podcast. And then you realize that it's true.
Oof.
What? So, without going into too many details, if you're a true crime fan, I would say do The Dating Game Killer. Maybe if you're not a true crime fan, don't start with that one. Start with the ones that we just said.
Yeah.
But to me, I binged this entire thing because I was so fascinated by the story. I remember listening to the trailer of this and knowing, yep, I'm going to listen to all of these.
Right now.
Right now. Exactly. So, Sherry Beth, your last podcast.
My last one. Jenna and Julian.
You guys, I'm so sad this doesn't exist anymore.
Yes.
Oh, so this... Moment of silence.
I know.
All right, go ahead.
Everybody loves Jenna Marbles. If you don't love Jenna Marbles, I don't know what's wrong with you. She's fantastic, and Julian is fantastic, and their podcast was so random and so fun, and I loved their podcast so much. I don't even know, like there wasn't ever really like a topic.
Mm-mm.
Like, I mean, some of them had sort of loose topics, but like they just talk about the most random things, and I just wanted to like listen to their conversation.
Well, honestly, even as we were talking about the LeggLife podcast and what I wanted it to be, I had their podcast in mind because I loved that every episode was different. It wasn't a continuous story, and sometimes there'd be a serious episode, and sometimes there would just be absolutely like ridiculous episode.
Yeah. And
it was everything in between, but you listened because of what you just said, Sherry. It was this conversation between like two people you liked.
Yeah.
I loved it.
It's just, I loved their podcast.
In fact, you know, obviously our hope is that Jenna somehow comes back to YouTube someday just because we loved her so much. But honestly, what I would probably like to have back even more is the podcast.
I think I would agree with that. Like, I just miss them being in my life.
Yep, I completely agree.
Yeah.
So my last podcast is, and this is going to touch on one of the things that I love about podcast. It's a podcast called Missing in Alaska. Now, you guys know, I've lived here since I was 3 years old. I love this state.
What?
Believe it or not, shocking. This was a true crime story that I had never heard of. And I remember, so I was scrolling through like the top charts on true crime podcasts, and I saw Alaska. I was like, wait, what? Like, excuse me, what? And so I listened to it, and I was like, hold on, 1 second. And I would like wait with anxiety for the new episodes to get released. I was like, I've got to know what's next. I've got to know what's next. And for me, it was so great because like I knew the places they were talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I knew like, I don't know, it was the craziest thing. And so I loved that because it was about a place that I love, but it was also a story that happened here that I had never heard of before.
Yeah.
That was so unbelievable. And that was just, it was amazing to me. In fact, I'll give you guys a little bit of a glimpse into my weirdness. Before I'm traveling somewhere, I will look up true crime podcasts that were based in that location and listen to them.
See, that would just creep me out.
Well, I kind of like that though. And so I remember before, like my road trip, I was looking for like true crime podcasts in all of the areas that like I was traveling. When I was flying to Orlando, just a couple trips ago, I found this true crime podcast about this girl who went missing a number of years ago. And I just like, that's what I do. I go to a location. Some people buy like a travel guide, not Adam Legg. I'm listening to true crime podcasts about that area. So a little bit weird. So those are just some of the podcasts that we love.
Yep.
There are others that we've listened to together. There's others that we've liked. But we do have we do have different tastes in podcasts and things that we like.
Yeah.
Sherry, so I kind of have the genres that I default to, which really is true crime.
Yeah, just the one genre.
The one genre. That's really true. For you, are there other things that you would like to get more into in the podcast? Like, I'd like to listen to more podcasts about this kind of stuff.
Probably. I mean, honestly, I don't spend a lot of time on the platform, so I really don't even know, like, what's out there.
Yeah. That's one of the things I remember, gosh, a couple trips ago to Florida. Auburn and I were talking about podcasts, and she had mentioned that she, really didn't know how to, like, use them, and this was still very new to her.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of even introducing her to podcasts. And for me, I even had the realization that, man, like, there is a podcast on everything.
Right, yeah.
Like, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a book fan, there are a ton of literary podcasts. If you want podcasts just on Bigfoot, they're out there. Believe me, I've listened. If you want podcasts about, like, kind of any single topic you can think of.
Yeah.
From obscure to, like, mainstream, they're all there.
Yeah, well, and, so I would probably listen to, like, literary ones. I would love to kind of dig into that more. Something sort of like Harry Potter and the Sacred Text, or something where they're talking about specific books.
What if there was a podcast that was just chatting about Jane Austen?
Oh my goodness.
It's got to exist.
It's probably, yeah.
There's probably dozens
does.
of them.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
I
know what I'm doing after this.
So, next, Sherry.
Yeah.
Let's talk about where we listen to podcasts. Yep. Because this is different for most people.
Yeah.
Where do you listen to podcasts?
Well, like I said, kind of at the beginning, when I work is a good time for me to listen to them, just because it's easier than, like, a YouTube video.
Yep, for sure.
But mostly I listen to podcasts when we're flying.
Yeah.
When I'm on a plane.
Yep. That's exactly me too.
Yep.
That is when I binge them. Before we travel, I don't download movies or shows or books to my phone. I download podcasts.
Yeah, so I do all of them, but depending on how I'm feeling and what I feel like doing on the plane and how long our flight is. But yeah, like, that's honestly when I've listened to most of the Harry Potter and the Sacred Text. It's just on a plane.
Yep. Or for me, the other thing is driving, but not driving. So I can't listen to a podcast if I'm driving a short time. Like, if I'm driving 10 minutes somewhere, I'm not going to listen to 10 minutes of a 60-minute podcast and pick it up.
Right.
I need to be able to listen to the whole episode. Just kind of how my brain works, right? I have a hard time shutting it off and starting it back up again. And so if I'm driving an hour or more, I for sure will listen. Yeah. Like, on my road trip, during my sabbatical month a couple years ago, like I said, I listened to mostly just podcasts.
Yeah.
Also, I think I talked about this recently. If I have 10 minutes left in a podcast episode and I get home, I'll for sure sit in the car, or I'll just keep driving. Or I'll just keep driving.
That's so funny.
So yeah, that's kind of the podcast. That's our podcast routine or rhythm. Now, Sherry, let's kind of end this by talking about, so how are we liking doing a podcast? We've talked about what we've listened to. Podcasting, doing it, producing this has been new to us.
Yes.
How are we feeling now that we're 25 episodes in?
I actually really like it. I feel like we've been on YouTube for like 6 years, but I'm still super self-conscious when I'm on video. And so I think that there are facets of my personality that don't necessarily come out on a video that you get to hear on a podcast, because I don't have a camera in my face.
Yep.
And so I feel like that's a big thing for me. But I've just been really enjoying this. What about you?
Yeah, one of the comments, I just want to touch on that real quick. One of the comments that we've gotten the most from people since we started this is just how much you guys have loved getting to hear maybe a different side of Sherry. Yeah. And for me, when I listen to our podcasts, it feels more like the Sherry that I know, even than watching the YouTube videos. Yeah. Only because it's clear on YouTube, you're still a little bit reserved, right? When the camera goes on, it's still it's still like a little awkward. And
I try not to be, but I just am. Like, I don't know. I feel like when I'm being watched, I'm just awkward.
Well, I think that's the thing. It feels like you're being watched.
Yeah.
In fact, we've had friends that have said, "Hey, like, your podcast is doing really great. You guys should." And here's the reality: from a business standpoint, we should do this. They were like, "You guys should record the podcast via video. Just like set a camera up, record, have a video, and then create a second YouTube channel, like LeggLife Podcast YouTube channel, and people could watch a video version." Now, here's what I'll say. I don't know that we'll never do that. I'm not saying that. But for now, we really like it just being this.
Yeah, and I think because it does kind of feel more like a conversation between us, we're mostly looking at each other. Like, as we're talking here, we're not looking at a camera. We're not, we're looking at each other.
Yeah, we face each other.
Which we can't do when there's a camera, because that would just be really boring for everybody else.
Totally. So I don't know. Maybe eventually we'll record this via video. I'd be curious to know if that's something you guys want. But for now, we really like doing it this way.
Yep.
For me, I have loved doing the podcast. And there's a bunch of things I've loved. Just practically, one of the things I've loved is that there's basically no editing.
Yeah.
So right now, however long you're listening to, we've had no audio edits that I know we will need to edit out or change. Right. So this is just the kind of thing that we sit down, we talk, we have a conversation, and then I export it and I upload it. And the podcast goes to you guys.
Right. It's so easy.
It's unlike, whereas a YouTube video, there's lots of cutting and editing and putting clips together and doing all that. This feels very simple.
Yep.
I also feel like this medium lends itself well to who we already are, because we always have just naturally communicated well and had long, in-depth discussions on topics.
Right. Like, a lot of our podcast topics are things that we have already just discussed in depth.
Completely.
In length.
The other thing that I really love, and this might sound weird, is I love that right now there's nothing, the podcast doesn't have to be anything. What I mean is, like, there's no monetization tied to it. We're not looking for advertisers. This gets to be a fun, creative project that gets to just be a fun, creative project.
Right. There's no, production to it.
Yep. I love that.
Yeah, me too.
It's so great. It feels so lightweight and fun. Sitting down to record a podcast really does feel more fun. In fact, I can honestly say this. I have, over the last 6 months, I have enjoyed the LeggLife podcast more than I have the LeggLife YouTube channel.
I agree.
That's amazing.
And I will say, when I was so sick for so long, I was still able to do the podcasts because I can sit in a chair and talk where I don't have to be on camera. And
a lot of the podcasts, we don't have to wear pants.
Correct.
That's the other thing that makes video podcasts weird. It's like, wait, I have to wear pants? I'm out.
Yep. Nope.
I'm out.
No, thank you.
So you guys, that's our podcast episode. We haven't really talked about why we're doing this. We haven't really talked about kind of what podcasting is to us. And so we thought, you know what? We've made it 25 episodes. We haven't missed an episode. Let's take one and just talk about podcasting.
Yeah.
What it is to us, the kind of things we like to listen to, how we're enjoying this. I think podcasting to me is something I would like to dive more into, both in finding more podcasts that I like listening to, as well as just kind of continuing to do what we're doing.
I agree with both of those points.
Yeah?
I for sure want to continue doing our podcast, but I would also like to just dig into it more. The ones that I have listened to, I have really enjoyed.
Yep.
It's just not something that I have made part of my life.
That's fair.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to see the LeggLife podcast is we'll end this sort of like looking forward, like what would we like to see in the future of the LeggLife podcast? One thing I would like to see are like some of our friends.
Yeah, get some guests in here.
Because to me, this is just it's just a conversation.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's not an interview. It's just a conversation.
Yeah.
And we love our friends. We love talking to them. And so I think I'm excited over the next few months to start bringing other voices into the LeggLife podcast and just having conversations with people that we love about topics that we think are interesting.
Yes, without a filter.
Without a filter. Where Sherry can curse as much as she wants to.
As much as I damn well please.
Okay, Sherry. It's a family channel.
Nope, not this.
Not this. So, friends, we love you guys. And I think it's appropriate just to end this podcast episode of our podcast by just saying thank you.
Yeah.
You know, when we launched this, you guys, we had no clue if you were going to show up.
Right. Honestly, we were like, maybe a couple people will listen. We'll see.
We had no expectations. This was totally new for us. It's a totally new medium. We had never done anything like this before. You guys remember the Spill the Teacups where we did one episode, right? But you guys not just showed up for the first few episodes. You guys have continued to show up. It has been growing. I think we had our biggest listening week last week that we've ever had. We've crossed 10,000 that it's been listened to. I think it's like 10,300 now.
Jeez.
And so, just thank you.
Yeah, we love that.
we love having these conversations. We love doing this. But it's cool to know that you guys enjoy listening as well.
Yes.
The other thing I'd say as we look forward that I want to kind of figure out for us is how we get you guys more engaged in this platform.
Yes, that is my biggest complaint, I think. My only complaint.
Mine too.
Is that we just can't have these conversations and then discuss with you guys.
There's not a good comment section.
Right.
Right. So you guys know the way that we do this is over on the LeggLife YouTube channel. There's like a community tab. And every week we post a graphic that kind of says this week's topic. And we say that if you have comments or questions or just want to interact around this stuff, go over there and do that on that post.
Yep.
We know this is not ideal. We get that. But we just haven't found another ideal way,
Right.
a more ideal way.
Yes.
And so that's what we're going to do for now. So head over there. Let us know. Here's the thing I want to know from you guys. Your favorite podcast.
Yeah.
I don't care what topic. It could be obscure. It could be weird. If it's about Bigfoot, you get 10 bonus points for Gryffindor. Okay? Got it? So that's what I want you to do. I want you to head over there. Tell us your favorite podcast. Would
Yes.
love to know that. LeggLife community, we love you guys so very much. You always support us, and we appreciate it more than you could possibly know. And we will see you next week on the 26th episode of the LeggLife podcast. And next week, Sherry, we're actually talking about something that is unique to where we live.
Yes, we are.
Next week, we are talking about what in the heck is it like to live in the land of the midnight sun, where the freaking sun doesn't know when it's supposed to go to sleep.
Right. It is 3 hours past your bedtime.
Go to bed. Stop disobeying and go to sleep because I'm exhausted.
Correct.
So next week, that's what we're talking about on the LeggLife podcast. Friends, we love you and we'll see you then.